I turn it over to Nicholas. My name is Kayla Del Biondo, and I'm the Digital Services Librarian at New Canaan Library, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to this morning's program on CPACE. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Nicholas Zuba this morning for our virtual program on CPACE. Nicholas is an energy efficiency and environmental policy professional with more than a decade of experience working on environmental sustainability efforts in different communities in the Northeastern United States, specializing in deploying property assessed clean energy or PACE financing for property owners to make energy saving improvements. Nicholas currently works with the Connecticut Green Bank as a senior manager on the commercial, industrial, and institutional programs team, serving as the program manager of CPACE. So without further ado, thanks for speaking with us this morning, Nicholas. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Kayla. And thank you again for having me this morning. It's a pleasure, certainly, to present on the CPACE program that is offered by the Connecticut Green Bank in this virtual and as well as sort of new reality setting that we're in, thanks to what's happened with the COVID-19 pandemic. But nonetheless, still very happy, of course, to be able to present to certainly New Canaan's property owners and as well as nonprofit organization heads in this case, to be able to tell you about how CPACE can be used so that you can take control of your own energy destiny in this case by making key improvements to your own properties in the area of New Canaan. And so we'll be happy to touch on all that with you today. Before I do go into more detail talking about the CPACE program, just want to give you a quick overview about obviously the overarching organization that is the administrator of the CPACE program, that being the Connecticut Green Bank. So the Connecticut Green Bank is a quasi-public agency that was created in 2011 in this form to really become one of the first state-run green banks across the country, and that we've poised and positioned ourselves as a national leader on this movement, and really have also become a trusted partner when it comes to doing improvements to our commercial and industrial building stock here in Connecticut, which case others across the country have taken notice. But essentially that, we are here in our role as the Green Bank to basically carry out our vision, which is to empower, to empowering the world by the renewable energy of community, in which case you feel that renewable energy takes on a double meaning here. So not only are we trying to find ways to remove barriers for different types of property owners to make energy saving or even adopting to a renewable energy type improvements to their buildings, we're also trying to do it because we're trying to activate as many people as possible within their communities, because we recognize that this is climate change is a big and important existential threat that basically has to be tackled by as many people as possible. And so we had to bring as many people off the sidelines to basically get engaged in this movement so that we can be able to help as many people prosper as possible by taking control of their own energy destiny and future at this point. And then alongside of that with our mission, so again, as I've mentioned, that we are here to confront climate change and provide certainly society with healthier and more prosperous future by really increasing accelerating the flow of private capital into our markets that can energize the green economy. So not only trying to find ways to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and as well as to making our society certainly healthier as a result of doing that, but we're also then, yes, trying to find ways then to create obviously a new form of our economy at this point, which is to help with creating new jobs in the form of those people who are installers, energy auditors, and then at the same time, through doing these types of efforts, we're giving more dispensable income, whether it be to business owners or to those nonprofit organizations, so that they can continue to hire people and grow and expand the economy in their own ways by, again, trying to find ways to help reduce their operating expenses that go towards paying for energy so that they can go ahead and then continue to invest in their revenue generating and as well as in the process of the services that they'll provide to their communities, in this case for nonprofits who are so vital and important to, again, all of our communities. And essentially, so, we seek to innovate by creating these the different types of financial products that we put to the market. Then we're educating, as I'm doing today in this case, to educate property owners in New Canaan about certainly what CPACE is all about. And then certainly it's our hopes then to activate these property owners now to take control of their own energy future and make those key improvements and investments into their buildings. So again, that they can continue to prosper and do good for the environment and then for certainly their own bottom line. And so when we approach this issue talking about energy efficiency in nowadays, we had to ask the question, okay, so what are those energy challenges that most property owners face today? So first and foremost, building owners in and around Connecticut are dealing with unpredictable energy costs, in which case in Connecticut, we still pretty much are in the top 5 states in the country in terms of energy expense and just the pure cost of utility pricing in this case. In which case now that becomes a burden to property owners, especially who might have leaky and inefficient buildings that they're still trying to do their operations and businesses at. And so that causes certainly a bit of a challenge and an issue. And then at the same time, there's certainly other challenges that are difficult to anticipate or control. So in one case, obviously, that is talking about certainly buildings, who's basically where they are aging and the equipment may suddenly fail on them. They can't anticipate that and they can't expect that. But now I'd like to add almost to that same phrase is talking about what we've been dealing with COVID-19 and leading to the shutdown of businesses and nonprofit organizations as a result of the pandemic. That has now resulted in property owners now seeing a rapid decline in their revenues, their service fees that they may charge, and that then creates more challenges now to a property owner who now has to figure out, well, now how do I then also have to juggle being able to pay for my expensive, energy costs that I have if I've got less and less revenues now coming in, even to be able to pay for that, and then be able also to keep my payroll on the staff in this case, and keep these people employed, so we're not leading to a further economic downturn. But the fact of the matter is that we are dealing with this situation now because of COVID-19 and the accompanying economic downturn that has come alongside of that. This is presenting all kinds of challenges right now to commercial and industrial property owners across the state of Connecticut. And then so even if a property owner is poised at this point to think about doing energy saving improvements to their buildings, then of course they're presented with several different options and many different opportunities to make these energy saving improvements. And they're really unsure about, okay, well, what is the right sort of package of solutions that company for my building, and that we can go ahead and do, a meaningful energy saving project so that we can go ahead and make the most of really of this investment for our buildings at this point. Because certainly, property owners are not engineers. They don't have the, quick, understanding of, what really is the right kinds of improvements to do. And really, does the proposal seem to make sense? So it's very difficult for the property owners to feel confident in the different types of proposals, say, that a contractor will come to them with, and they don't really certainly know that they can put much trust in that, given they don't have that expertise to know what's best for their buildings. And then, as I've mentioned certainly before, certainly yes, property owners are dealing with that issue about that they are having an aging, more uncomfortable, and an inefficient building that certainly could take twists and turns at any point, that they just don't know now that the life of the current systems in their building, whether it's like HVAC equipment, lighting, or anything of that nature, they just don't know when at any point those are going to fail on them, and that they're going to be forced to have to make improvements in this case that are just so unexpected. But again, they're dealing with all these situations with their buildings being more aging and inefficient, because really too, they also too don't have enough capital set aside as well to be able to go and make key improvements to their buildings. So they're saddled with this situation, and it's not the ideal situation. It's not necessarily one that property owners want to do and have in front of them, that they want to make these key investments and not have the status quo prevail. And so this is kind of the different types of challenges that these industrial and commercial type property owners are facing at this point. And so enter CPACE. So CPACE, which stands for Commercial Property Assessed Clean Energy, this now becomes an innovative financing solution that's provided by the Connecticut Green Bank, which can help property owners make these green energy upgrades more accessible and more affordable to them. And in which case then, with the way CPACE is designed, it's helping those property owners to overcome all the challenges that I just went through. So it helps them not only take control of their energy costs, but I'm going to add to that as well that that's helping to simply reduce operational type expenses that are going towards their energy costs, so that now they can also too keep their business or their nonprofit doors open, so that they can keep people on the payroll and still be able to keep these organizations running and operating in New Canaan. They can act with more confidence because certainly they're working also with the Green Bank, in which case we have partners who help to take a look at these proposals to be sure that it is a sensible and certainly economic, in economic sense, type of project for them to do. And at the same time, we're certainly now making those key investments in their properties so that making the buildings more comfortable and certainly more efficient, so that again, now they're taking control of certainly their energy future and being able to, again, make these key investments for their properties for the foreseeable future. So how does the CPACE program work? So the idea is that this particular program can serve all different types of properties. So we can run from helping a small house of worship in this case, all the way up to say your Class A office building. So we run the gambit in terms of helping all different types of commercial and industrial properties, because basically those properties all fall underneath our umbrella. And so, we are designed to be able to help any of those types of properties, which then in between can also include, whether it be, manufacturing and industrial type facilities, other types of office buildings, as well as certain types of warehouses and retail spaces. All of those could fall, again, within the umbrella of our CPACE program. And then the idea, of course, is that, each building is different and they have their own different needs. And so the idea is that each building has to be looked at as its own case. And so when a property owner is considering doing a project, we certainly make it known to property owners that a good practice is to work with a specific set of contractors. Usually we recommend that they work, and trying to get proposals from a minimum of 3 contractors who can come in and perform what's known as an energy audit on the building. And then this energy audit will help them to determine where currently does their building stand? How much energy is the building currently using? What is certainly the age of those energy systems in their building? And then that can all together help a contractor then determine what then is going to be the best energy saving improvements that could be used and be installed in this building so it can help reduce their energy costs. And then the different types of energy upgrades that we can cover in our program, it does also run the gambit. It can include energy efficient type improvements. So that can be improvements like lighting, heating and cooling equipment, insulation, windows and doors, anything that really can help with improving the actual energy systems that power that building, and as well as to, anything that can help the actual building envelope itself to be better sealed and keep in basically that hot or cold air in this case during the winter or certainly these summer months in this case that you're paying for, to basically condition that building for occupancy at those points. And then certainly too, we also cover for different types of renewable energy sources. So that could be things like solar system, a combined heat and power system, fuel cells. So any of those types of improvements, those can be considered as part of basically different types of solutions to making an energy saving project possible at your building. And just to kind of give you a sense about, again, any type of property that we can help, and as well as any kind of improvement, this is just a quick breakdown of what we've done across different types of properties in Connecticut, as well as the different types of projects. So as you'll notice, we got a pretty even distribution of projects across property types. So we've done, the most kind of projects has been in office spaces, which is comprised about 26% of a total portfolio of projects that have been done through the program. 24% of those have helped industrial and manufacturing type facilities, 21% being retail, and then the mix after that being nonprofits and other types of facilities in between. And then in terms of what kinds of projects we have done through our program, So again, a large portion of it, this about 71% of our projects have been comprised of just a renewable energy project. So kind of like a solar system on its own, or other kinds of renewable energy sources by itself with no other improvements included. 15% of our projects just involve energy efficiency improvements. So that would be just like lighting, heating, and cooling type equipment with no renewable energy sources included alongside of that. And then lastly, then combined being the 14% that you see there, that's really then when it's combining of energy efficiency and renewable energy systems together for making a really comprehensive and deep energy efficient retrofit for a building. And so what we do provide to property owners is basically 100% financing for doing a project, so that we design these projects in such a way that we'll be able to pay for all the cost of those energy saving improvements, so that again, they're not coming out of pocket as the property owner to make energy saving investments in this case, and that they can keep that capital in this case for other kind of really revenue generating activities that they would want to do, and not put that necessarily towards just simply these capital expenses that need to go for making a building. So that's why we're here, to be able to help them with taking away the barrier of basically doing these energy saving improvements and keeping their own in-house capital for other types of key improvements for their business or for keeping a nonprofit open. And then the idea of the way that the CPACE obligation is repaid over time, the idea is that it's paid through a benefit assessment lien that gets placed on the property. So it acts very similar to any kind of other municipal tax assessment, like water, a sewer, or any kind of other special district assessment that, say, a municipality might run. And so the idea then is that when we place this benefit assessment lien on the improved property, it will then trigger doing the billings and collections through New Canaan's tax collector. So the tax collector will send a CPACE bill alongside of the normal real estate property tax bill, and is done along this very same real estate a billing cycle that you would have now. And that would then be sent to the property owner to be made, where they'll make their separate CPACE payment, and as well as then their real estate property tax payment. And then that will then have it where then they'll send those two payments back into the tax collector, who then will then submit on and send on the CPACE payment then back to the Connecticut Green Bank. And then that's how basically that how the CPACE obligation would be repaid over time. And then the idea, of course, of the way that these projects are designed, and one of the key sort of criteria of our program that has to be met, is that basically these particular projects do have to show that it's saving on energy, and that it's translating into economic dollar savings for the property owner. So a key metric that has to be met is what's known as the savings to investment ratio, in which case that's just to say that the amount of energy savings they're getting from doing this project has to basically be able to pay back on the investment that is being put forward for doing these energy saving projects. And so that ratio has to be anything greater than 1 at the end of the day. And that will get checked out really through an independent third-party technical review process. So this is what gives then now property owners the confidence to know that this is going to be a good and economic sort of project for them to consider doing. So the idea is that this technical reviewer will basically look at it with an unbiased and basically just an impartial view in this case, so that they're just looking at it for what's the assumptions that the contractor is making. Does it all seem like that is reasonable and makes sense? And that they're really just looking that over, as a really, again, impartial viewer of that project, to be sure it meets our criteria in this case of our program, so that then the Green Bank or any other capital provider can then feel comfortable to provide out the financing for doing that particular project. And this kind of demonstrated visually for you. So let's say on your left here, you have your typical commercial and industrial building. So normally in this case, you will have a situation where the property owner is literally just paying towards their energy bills in this case. They're not necessarily seeing any kind of savings, and they haven't put any kind of key investments towards their building in this case to get any additional energy savings. And so money literally is just flying out the window of these buildings in this case to go towards paying those maybe more costly and more expensive energy bills that they're seeing. But then when you involve CPACE, as you'll see then on the right, now when you involve CPACE, now we're providing the funding in this case to make the key investments into your building, in which case now that's going to give you savings over time that you're going to see from doing these energy saving projects. But of course, it's with the understanding that you're now going to be still paying, some form of an energy bill, but hopefully that energy bill is going to be much lower now than what you were paying in the past. And also too, certainly you'll be paying back your CPACE obligation over time as well with this, but that you still should be seeing some form of savings as you continue to make your CPACE payments over time. And then the idea, of course, here is that then, over certainly the life of the project, you'll be seeing a net savings from doing this energy saving project, even after you've put into consideration the CPACE financing that you're repaying over time. So, you're making key and critical investments in your building. That's also too improving the value of that building because now you're making those key investments into the property. And then certainly you're seeing the net savings to yourself as well, which also is adding value to that property because now you're decreasing your operating expenses and increasing your net operating income as a property owner, so that now you can continue to do all different kinds of other investments into, say, your business, your nonprofit organization. So again, you're keeping your doors open for providing your key and vital services, and as well as your business offerings for your community. And so the CPACE program, we've been in existence now since 2012. And in that time, we've certainly done a lot of great work with this program. And as you'll notice, certainly over time, we have been steadily increasing and scaling up as a program since that time to be able then to provide our financing to property owners in making key investments into their building. So as of the end of the first quarter of 2020, which would have ended on March 31st, we have done so far 308 projects across the state of Connecticut. And what that translated into was about providing about $164 million in total financing to property owners for making those energy saving improvements. And of course, across the state too, because the way that our program is designed, our program is a voluntary opt-in program where basically each municipality of the 169 municipalities in Connecticut has to basically opt in order to get basically the CPACE program and to allow it to be able to operate in the town. Because again, simply given that we have to work with the tax collector to do the billings and collections, we actually have to have it where now the town signs off to allow us to provide our financing in town. So in which case, New Canaan was one of the early adopters of the program and has long been in our program. But I regret to say, of those 308 projects, New Canaan, unfortunately, so far has not done a CPACE project, even having been in for all this time. So I'm hopeful that with the education I'm doing today, it will certainly get some property owners here to consider using the program, so that you will certainly take advantage of making energy saving improvements at this time for your own properties in the community of New Canaan. So hope to get that first project on the board in this case, so you can help us continue to grow this graph in this case and the trends that we're seeing with the program. And so I want to just then leave off with here a couple of case studies just to show different types of projects that we have done in our CPACE program over time. And so this is one first example of a property owner, which is a manufacturer known as Crest Mechanical, where I believe they're based in Bridgeport, Connecticut. And in which case they did a 55 kilowatt roof mounted solar system, in which case over the course of the time of this improvement, they're going to be getting over nearly about $418,000 in total savings over the life, again, of that improvement that they've done. Oh, and I apologize. I'm sorry. I thought it was actually Bridgeport. It's actually, I'm sorry, it's in the community of Hartford. So in this case, this is a 34,500 square foot facility, built in 1925. So again, a much older building, which probably was in need of some improvements. The cost of doing this particular roof-mounted solar system was about $145,000. And with doing this improvement, they took it out, a 20-year CPACE financing term, in which case, this then translated into a repayment of close to $12,000 per year for them to go and pay back on their CPACE obligation. But as you'll notice, the annual energy cost savings over their financing term was going to be something on the order of close to $21,000. So that's going to clearly exceed the annual CPACE assessed amount in this case that they would be expected to pay back, where now the savings is more than covering each year for the CPACE obligation that they have to pay back each and every year. And as I mentioned before, certainly the amount of energy savings over the life of the improvements was close to $418,000. And then that translates into about 203 million BTUs of energy, in this case, savings that they're getting over time in this case. And certainly from Paul Breglio himself, the CEO of this company, he understood that CPACE provided low cost and long-term financing for them to be able to further support their desire to deploy solar energy and stabilizing their energy costs over time. So they're hedging in this case against what could be still an increasing cost of energy over time, and that they've decided to take advantage of this program so that they could then get their energy costs under control, and making sure that again they're basically just making sure they can stabilize their energy costs through doing this particular improvement. And then the last case study I wanted to share was again a kind of an organization and a nonprofit in this case, who basically is on the other end of the spectrum, a tiny building in this case, who though still has a lot of energy challenges, as a nonprofit and a house of worship. So this is the Calvary Temple Christian Center, in which case I know this is in Bridgeport in this case, in Connecticut. In which case they did a high efficiency gas boiler and fuel conversion over to natural gas from basically fuel oil that they had originally. And they had a project, in which case that was able to garner them over $267,000 in cost savings over the life of their upgrade. And so for their house of worship, it was a pretty sizable one, a close to 12,000 square foot building that was built in 1870. So once again, an example of a very old building that certainly was going to be in need of key and critical investments to make it more energy efficient. So, but again, this particular improvement, it cost about $53,000. They did get an incentive from their utility in this case, which then brought their total CPACE financing to about $52,000, in which case that probably is $52,000 that's inclusive of the closing fee that we would charge on our financing. And so they took out a 10-year financing term for their CPACE financing that resulted in basically an annual CPACE assessment amount of around $6,600 that they paid each year. But again, their annual energy cost savings that they're seeing is over $13,000 in this case. So again, they're getting more than double the amount of energy savings in this case than what their annual CPACE assessment amount that they're paying. So this is again helping a nonprofit in this case to more than cover for their CPACE assessment while being able to pocket savings at the same time each year. And again, as I mentioned, they're expected to get over $267,000 in lifetime energy savings, which actually more or less helps again with a nonprofit who really needs this help, and also seeing about 231 million BTUs of energy savings at this point. And certainly, as the pastor and his wife and spouse had mentioned, they said, they kind of really knew that that CPACE was going to be certainly a very important investment, an opportunity for their property in this case, and that they knew that this was going to be so helpful in this case to a congregation who really was suffering in this case. I think during the winter months, where I think even as Pastor Thompson had once said, that he found that he had to come down to his church to go and basically smack the old heating unit in this case to get it to turn on and function properly before basically he had to conduct his services in this case, for his congregation. But they found that more times than not, during the winter time especially, their building was very cold, very uncomfortable for their parishioners. And so by doing this improvement, it certainly made their congregation and their church certainly more welcoming, certainly more comfortable for congregants to come in, and certainly, again, just very helpful, again, for a house of worship that is always key and critical, certainly, to building community where they are in Bridgeport. So again, another example of another great project for a nonprofit organization who was able to take advantage of the program. And that pretty much sums up my presentation. I'm hopeful, of course, that those of you in the community in New Canaan, whether, again, you're a small nonprofit organization all the way up to a bigger business at the end of the day, I'm hopeful that you will consider taking advantage of the CPACE program and how we can certainly assist you at this point, again, for making these key and critical investments so that you can reduce your energy costs to yourselves as organizations going forward. So thank you so much again for giving me the opportunity to speak before you all today. And I'm happy certainly to take any questions that might come up. So thank you.
Thanks, Nicholas. We can take any questions in the Q&A feature of Zoom. So please feel free to drop your question in there if you have a question for Nicholas. All right, we did have a question come in. So someone in the audience asked, what is the process for exploring projects?
Yeah, that's a very good question to ask. So, there's certainly a few steps that are involved with the process. So normally, as I was mentioning, the best way to begin with this process is that, you should talk to multiple different contractors who are basically, building performance, contractors who have an understanding of how to go through a building and basically find where the energy saving opportunities are in that building. And so normally I always recommend talk to a few different contractors, because you never want to talk to one because you don't know necessarily, are you getting the best pricing possible and the best proposal possible for making those energy saving upgrades. And so once you were to work with a number of different contractors to get competing proposals, and then you select one that you feel most comfortable with, I would then advise that then you would submit in a CPACE application, which can be done right online, and it's a pretty straightforward and streamlined application now, where it can be filled out really within, I think, a matter of 10 minutes. It's a very simple application, and it can be done by just scrolling down one continuous screen nowadays on our website. And then once you submit the application, we will do a review of the project and as well as the property to be sure that it meets all of our conditions or requirements of our program. And if it does, then we would certainly welcome then your contractor to work then with our technical administrator and reviewer to basically review that project so that, again, it's meeting our statutory requirement of the savings to investment ratio, as I've mentioned before. And as long as that is met, then we can go ahead and then we would do a financial underwriting on that property owner. So we normally would ask for at least 2 years worth of prior year financials of whether it be a nonprofit organization or being their business, to be able then to determine that we can be comfortable to provide the financing and that you have the wherewithal to be able to repay your CPACE obligation over time. And if that all works out, then we move to a point where we have to get approval by the Green Bank itself in order for the project to be considered to be given the financing. If the project is under $500,000 in size, in terms of the amount of financing that we would give you, that normally can be approved just by a senior staff credit committee, which is basically, can be given probably within a matter of a few business days. It doesn't take long. But if it's a project at or above $500,000 in financing, then basically we have to go to our either board of directors or our deployment committee, which is one of the two sort of governing entities of the Green Bank that then we would have to go to in order to seek that approval, in which case any one of those two entities typically only meets on a monthly basis. So we always try to time it so that we can line it up with one of those pre-scheduled meetings, so you're not waiting long then for the approval to come in. So that's certainly another step that has to be done. And then as long as then we get the approval in place, then we would move on to then providing to actually then creating the financing agreement by getting closing documentation that we would need to develop that financing agreement. And then once all that's placed together, and then you would do a review of that financing agreement, then certainly we would do the formal closing where the property owner would sign that, and then certainly then the Green Bank would then countersign that agreement. And then you would have the financing in place and get the disbursements necessary basically for then doing the construction of the project until it is in fact completed. And then once certainly you do have all the disbursements made and the project's completed, then basically whatever sort of is the next tax payment cycle, in this case, in the town that you would come up to. That would be then the first time then you would receive your CPACE bill, and then you would start making your repayments over time. So those really are all certainly the main steps of the process. Now, the one thing also to make mention about is that if you have a mortgage on the property, we are required to get a lender consent from that property's mortgage holder in this case, because the mortgage holder has to take a subordinated position to any CPACE lien that goes on the property, since it does take on the character of a tax assessment. And so basically, we had to work collaboratively with that mortgage holder. They will do a review of the project and as well as that property owner to make sure that they're comfortable to then subordinate their position to our CPACE lien that we're looking to put on the property. And we've been pretty successful in getting lender consent in the past. I would still say that of all the times we've had to go to mortgage lenders in the past, we basically have gotten our lender consent probably 9 out of every 10 times successfully. So mortgage lenders are becoming more educated and accepting of the idea of CPACE, and that they know that it's not something detrimental necessarily to their investment on the property, and they recognize that it adds value certainly for the building and certainly for their property owner. So, but those are certainly all the key steps that certainly a property owner would have to go through as part of our process.
Excellent. There's a follow-up question there. Is there a way to establish program eligibility before obtaining project contractor proposals?
So, I mean, basically, yeah, I mean, we have information on our criteria of our program that we could certainly, we can normally do what's like known as a pre-qualification of any property in this case to make sure that with maybe whatever project is proposed, it could meet our basic criteria of the program in this case, so that you'll know, is it really something that could be a good project and as well as a good property owner who could be suited for using the CPACE program. So normally we'd be happy to do kind of a pre-qualification where we can tell you in advance, how much could your property potentially qualify in terms of CPACE financing based on, say, your property's value, because that's one of the main criteria too that we would look at. So normally in this case with our financing that we provide as the Green Bank, we have the provision which known as loan to value, where we normally don't go anything above 80% of the property's value in terms of combining between your CPACE cost and as well as any pre-existing mortgage debt on the property. And then we also have kind of another metric, which then we just look at the project cost over the property's value. Then we normally don't like to go anything above 35% for that in this case, in that metric. So those are a couple of things that we would check for. That we can do very early on in the process with you as a property owner to be sure that you're potentially meeting those criteria, and it would be worthwhile to invest the time and the effort then to go through with doing CPACE financing.
Thank you. I think I'll turn it over to the audience once more. Any last minute questions for Nicholas? Feel free to put in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll be wrapping up in a minute. All right, what's the best resource for property owners to turn to learn more?
Yeah, so if a property owner wants to learn a little bit more about the CPACE program, certainly more directly from the program, certainly slide them on right now. This is my contact information, so you can certainly go ahead and reach out to me to talk more about how the program certainly works in a little bit more detail, and then setting them up with the resources for the next steps, which would be kind of pointing them to our list of registered contractors who work within our program, because those registered contractors have been properly trained already on knowing and understanding how the CPACE program works. And they would really be the people I think you would want to talk to and reach out to next. And so, we could certainly help with facilitating some of those introductions already with some of those contractors, so that you can begin that process and journey of developing up an energy saving project, and then working with the Green Bank certainly afterwards to consider it for financing. So, but yeah, certainly as a first immediate step, you can certainly feel free to reach out to me because I am the program manager of the program. And so we'd be happy to talk to you about certainly those next key steps that would have to be taken and how we can get you started.
All right, I think we will wrap it up there. Thank you to the audience for asking those questions at the end. Thank you, Nicholas, for your presentation.
Great. Thank you so much, Kayla, for having me. And again, pleasure very much to present today.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.